2 or 3 times a week I have a parent saying they're going to knock my lights out. And that's just part of, part of my day.
Parents feel judged and blamed by teachers, or I feel judged and blamed by teachers because they'll judge me and look at me and almost look down at me.
Parents don't hold teachers with that same level of respect that I think that they used to. And there is a blame culture that actually it's the teacher's fault that their child is behaving in that way.
When I want to see the teacher, and the teacher is busy in the morning and busy and tired in the afternoon, it's a case of when.
Parents increasingly read about parent power and parental choice, that they are the consumers and school the service providers. At the same time, many teachers believe that parents are the cause of underachievement and disruptive behaviour in school. It can make for a tense relationship.
Parents are lacking in parenting skills, I think.
Socialising is done at school, and I think children who maybe don't know how to hold a knife and fork or whatever their problems may be will soon learn.
They're not meeting the physical, intellectual, emotional and social needs of their children in many cases, and this does impact on the child's education.
Zero tolerance that I'm starting to hear of if you're not coming in to learn, then get out. If you're coming in and you're going to mess about, then you can get out.
We asked Fiona Miller, mother of 3 and parent governor, to explore the problematic relationship between parents and teachers and to look at solutions in different schools. First, Fiona goes to meet the man who articulated the frustrations of many teachers in his speech to the Head Teachers Union. David Hart was quoted as saying, "Giving parents more power is like putting alcoholics in charge of a bar."
What I actually said was giving irresponsible parents more power was like putting an alcoholic in charge of a bar, which is quite a different thing. What I was trying to say basically was if we want to talk about parent power, if that's the right expression, let's be clear that some parents are acting irresponsibly now, and to give them more power doesn't seem to me to be a very sensible way forward.
And do you feel that there are more irresponsible parents these days than there were maybe 10 or 15 years ago?
Yes, there are, and there's no doubt about that at all. Our members report very clearly that more parents seem to be unable to give the children the support they need at home, or indeed in discussion with the school. They don't come to parents' evenings, they don't support the school's homework policy. And in extreme cases, which are getting more and more unfortunately, we are now facing cases where parents are abusing members of staff, they're even assaulting them, and even, in extreme cases, threatening them at home.
I mean, one of the big flashpoints, it seems to me, is over behaviour, and in particular parents who feel their children are being wrongly accused of something and that then they're being made to feel responsible for that, but not necessarily given the support that they might need to try and help support better behaviour at home and at school.
Parents will sometimes naturally leap to the defence of their children. That's understandable. I hope that, however, parents will understand that if the school has got the facts right, if the school has the evidence that there's been bullying or violence or disruptive behaviour, they will accept that the school has to take action. But some parents will never accept that, and their child will always be innocent.
And are you arguing, therefore, that parents who can't accept that ought to be have their child being at the risk of it being excluded from the school?
Yes, I do. I mean, obviously, the government doesn't accept my argument. The government says you should only exclude pupils because of pupils' misbehaviour. I say that in extreme cases where that relationship is broken down, then for the good of the child or the children, there should be a managed transfer to another school where they can have a fresh start.
So this is really an issue about inadequate parenting, really. I mean, do you feel that teachers feel slightly resentful that they have to compensate for parents' failings at home?
I mean, basically, if a teacher takes the view, and I understand that the parents should present the children to school when they first come into school, properly trained in social skills. It's not the job of the teacher to do the parent's job. And they would hope the parents would continue to make sure that their children are presented in a way which we don't see sometimes because some pupils are too disruptive, violent, and behave outrageously.
Parents don't really have very many rights other than to an annual report and being taught the national curriculum. Do you think that there should be more rights for parents?
Well, actually, if you look at the homeschool contract, parents do have rights. Not every head teacher in this country believes in the homeschool contract. I do. I think it's an important document. It's not legally enforceable. But the homeschool contract will lay down parents' rights, and they're more extensive than some people give credit for. They do have the right for their child to be educated properly. They do have the right for their child to be educated without violence or disruption to their education. They do have the right to be consulted. So I think they do have quite a lot of rights. What happens is many parents, I think, don't understand the rights they actually have, and maybe are reluctant to enforce those rights, if you want to put it that way.
So all this talk about parent power, and particularly in the last Queen's speech, I mean, do you think this will give parents a sort of wrong impression about the amount of power that they actually have?
I don't like the word power because I don't like head teacher power. I don't like parent power. It gives the wrong impression. We're not in the business of power games. But it is a partnership. It is an understanding that the school has a responsibility to try and ensure that your child has a broad and balanced curriculum and that they achieve the best they can possibly achieve. That sometimes breaks down. It can be because you can't recruit the teachers of the right quality. Maybe because of a succession of supply teachers. It could be all sorts of reasons. It could be poor teaching. And that's the job of the head to address that. It's a prime responsibility.
So you don't feel that the lack of respect that some teachers feel is out there isn't part of a sort of collective insecurity in the profession, which means that some schools act as though they need to wave a string of garlic when the parent comes in because... You know.
Yeah, I mean, there are some schools, I've no doubt, still like that, but they've got to be dragged kicking and screaming, quite frankly, into 2005. You can't continue like that. Heads who actually don't see the value of parents, don't see the role of parents in its proper form, won't involve parents, won't have that proper relationship with the vast majority of the parent body, are riding for a fall.
Well, I think he has got a pretty good grasp of the situation, and I was very glad that he talked about and admitted that there are schools where they probably aren't doing it well enough at the moment. You know, that heads and teachers do feel scared of parents, and that's not acceptable, because it isn't acceptable, because everybody knows that parents' involvement in their children's education gives their children the best start in life. Well, I think the only bone I would pick with him was when he said that, you know, parents did have rights and could enforce them through the whole homeschool contract, because in fact the homeschool contract has no legal basis, and it's actually very difficult, even if the contract says they want your child has the right to be properly taught or whatever, to then go back and say, well, I don't consider that having 15 supply teachers in a term is good teaching. What are you going to do about it? His view is that the parent body has to rise up together, but actually, organising parents, all of whom have got busy lives and often don't get to school at all, particularly at secondary level, is quite difficult. And I think what individual parents want is to have their individual rights, upheld, as it were.
The parents' power in school is this. I'm sorry if I'm looking blank, but I don't think that the parents have got much power at all.
I think parents quite rightly believe that they are consumers and we are the provider. What I'd say is the child is the consumer and the parent and the teacher should be the provider.
Fiona has come to Gospel Oak Primary School, where she's been a parent and parent governor for over 10 years.
I just wanted to say that I will be in on Friday to see you then, to read with you.
A recent Ofsted report particularly praised the school's relationship with parents as outstanding, but it's taken time. When Alan Seymour was appointed head teacher 4 years ago, the school's relationship with parents was very different.
The school had, as you'll remember, had a history of parental aggression towards staff and towards each other, and a lack of faith in the school. But at the same time, we were wanting to form positive relationships with parents, so we had to have clear boundaries. One of the things that I and my two deputies did right from the beginning was we made ourselves very visible around the school at the beginning and the end of the school days, in particular when parents were delivering and collecting their children. And we insisted on staff bringing the children out at the end of the day, so all the staff were very visible, and that inevitably began to break down some barriers because people talk. And we had to deal with a small minority of very aggressive parents who felt that it was okay to go into classrooms to be abusive to staff in front of whole classes of children and so on, and we banned them. And that was very, very popular with the parental majority in the school.
And do you think there are any members of your staff, though, who are still worried by parents and do feel nervous about building relationships with them?
It's a spectrum, and there are some people who are very, very comfortable, and inevitably some who are a little less so. And I would be dishonest if I said there are still some people who sometimes fall into the trap, and I'll say this to them, I'll say this to their face, so I don't mind saying it to the camera, sometimes will criticise or will stereotype children because of parental background. And I think we as a school have to constantly be sending out a message that we can be highly achieving. Every single child here can do very well in life, can go to university and so on. We've got to believe that. We've got to get the children to believe that. We've got to get the parents to believe that. So the teachers have got to believe it in the first place.
But do you think that there is, I hate to use the phrase poor parenting, but maybe inadequate parenting at home, that maybe that's too much for schools alone to have to overcome, and that makes them feel quite pressured?
Yes, it would make life a lot easier, wouldn't it, if society was different and children did come in not having been reared on a diet of video games and cartoons and were used to family meals where they sat around and learned use a knife and fork properly. But that isn't reality, and it's not the children's fault that they're coming in with the skills or lack of skills that they've got, and we've got to start from where the children are at.
As the head would say, give the parents what it is they really want. They want their children to be in a school where they feel safe and secure and happy in their learning. Now, if you get those things right, probably most parents will be quite satisfied. There are small groups of parents who will have other issues. There are some who are very pushy and want their children to be, doing more than they are doing at a certain stage, and there are others who are very, very hard to reach. The research was starting to come out that showed that, the single biggest influence on a child's achievement is their home circumstances and the support they get from their parents outside of school. And so obviously in a school like this, which has a relatively disadvantaged intake, that's terribly important to get the parents on board.
Across town, another primary school with an equally hard-to-reach parent population has taken a radical step to improve relations. The Parent House is an adult education centre set up in the old caretaker's house at Winton Primary School in central London. Fiona has been invited to celebrate its 5th anniversary. The area has a highly mobile and culturally diverse population. The centre runs courses for parents. Some directly relate to children's learning, but many specifically address parents' needs and wishes. 5 years ago, Gina Campitaro and the school's then head teacher Jane Fulford helped set up the Parent House.
But the wonderful thing about the Parents House is that it is a little house, so it makes people feel very comfortable, and it's just slightly off out of the school. So people who've had bad experiences with school, they don't have to come into school, they'll come into the Parent House. And you'd be surprised how many parents who you think are quite confident, quite able to come into school, will say to Gina, for instance, you don't know what it took to get me to ring that doorbell.
But do you think then that having it not staffed by formal teaching staff is a very important factor in building relationships with parents?
So you also need that link with school, because you need to know what's going on in the school and what's happening with children, so that you can help parents support their children and help raise achievement. So you still need that, but I think it has helped that we've been slightly removed from that.